Does anyone remember the title of my talk yesterday? What was the main topic?
Les quatre vérités.
The fourth truth? Right. And so do you remember the kinds of truth that I talked about?
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez des différentes sortes?
When we talk about we're talking about the Four Noble Truths taught by the Buddha, right? First of all, that's the overall topic. The Four Noble Truths. The Buddha said that because of not knowing the Four Noble Truths, both he and all of us travel throughout samsara, being born and dying again and again and again, because of not knowing the Four Noble Truths. So, with that, I wanted to explain about the word truth. So we talked about different types of truth. So does anyone remember those types of truth that we spoke about? Right, we use the truth. How do we, that being truthful is something we can use. Do you remember how we use it? What type of truth was that an example of? Do you remember?
She says, yes, she remembers. Yali spoke about, told three stories.
Right.
One about a family.
Right.
And
this was trying to exemplify one of the types of truth. So Wachi Sacha. Verbal speaking the truth. Swearing an oath of truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there's another type of truth. That's verbal truth. So I talked about three other types of truth. Conventional truth, right? Sammuti Sacha. Conventional truth is, a nun dresses like this. A man dresses like this, a woman dresses like this. This is my mother, this is my father. These are conventional truths. Okay. And those are truths we use to live in the world. We need those truths. But there's another type of truth. What is it? Right.
Ultimate reality.
Right, the truth of ultimate reality. And how many types of ultimate reality are there? This is a test. Right. Some of you know and some of you. What do yogis try to see when they meditate? Do they try to see conventional reality? Or do they try to see ultimate reality? That's right. Okay. So, and then the last type of truth called Arya Satya. The four noble truths. Why are they called Arya Satya? Okay. So these are truths that noble people know. When we know them, we become noble. Okay, so even if we took 5 or 6 months to discuss the Four Noble Truths, it would not be enough. They are very profound, subtle, and complex. So this talk is to explain the Four Noble Truths, mostly in terms of what the yogis experience during their practice. So most people know what the Four Noble Truths are, I think. They are the truth of suffering, the truth of its cause, the truth of cessation of suffering, and the truth of the way to the end of suffering. So, yogis, of course, we meditate so as to try to see the mind and matter that are really there, the mental and physical qualities for true nature. We don't try to see on the level of, this is an arm, this is a leg, this is the abdomen or the body. So when we observe the rising of the abdomen, the qualities such as becoming tight or stretching, some sorts of qualities are evident. And these are material ultimate reality, or matter. When we observe the rising of the abdomen, the mind that knows the rising is also something that is evident. And this is mental ultimate reality, or mind, or in Pali, nama. The physical rising is rupa, and the mental, the knowing of it is mind, or nama. Mind and matter are the truth of suffering, dukkha satcha. So the yogi observes rising, falling. Rising is matter, and knowing it is mental. Falling is matter, and knowing it is mental. And these two things, matter, mind and matter, are dukkha satcha, the truth of suffering. And we have to observe, things such as the rising and the falling of the abdomen continually, so that we can know the truth of suffering the way it is. Mindfulness, sati in Pali, and the other qualities that continually observe are the truth of the path. This is magga satcha. Because of noting like that, craving, or the truth of the cause, samudaya satcha, does not arise. When the yogi notes and knows the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause, or craving, goes away. Craving comes to an end with every noting of rising, falling, walking, standing, eating, drinking, bending the arm, stretching the arm. With every observation of our actions, craving is coming to an end. With every observation of thinking or planning, remembering, and so on, craving comes to an end. With every observation of Vedana, that is pains, itching, aches, and so on, craving comes to an end. With every observation of the mind and matter that are involved in seeing, in hearing, and so on, craving comes to an end. And that cessation is called Nibbana. Nibbana is called the truth of cessation, Nirodha Satcha. So these are the Four Noble Truths: Dukkha Satcha, the truth of suffering; Samudaya Satcha, the truth of the cause of suffering; Magga Satcha, the truth of the path; and Nirodha Satcha, the truth of cessation, Nirodha Satcha, and the truth of the path, Magga Satcha. So this is the order in which the Buddha spoke about them in the suttas, and this order is called Desana order, because this is the order in which the Buddha taught. He started with the truth of suffering. The Buddha spoke first about the truth of suffering, so that beings who see life as just a party or entertainment would feel spiritual urgency. Spiritual urgency in Pali is called samvega. It's a type of knowledge, actually. So that people would have a sense of urgency. The Buddha first talked about suffering. And what is suffering? It's the suffering of having to be born, having to age, having to get sick, having to die, having to be separated from those we love, having to be together with those we don't like, not getting what we want. Just having a mind and body is suffering. The cause of all these sufferings is craving. And therefore the Buddha spoke about the truth of the cause second, in order to point out the culprit regarding our suffering. There's no one who created this suffering. No person created it for us. It comes about simply because of the greed, the craving in our own hearts. And so that we would know about this cause, the Buddha taught it second, after teaching about the truth of suffering. And third, the Buddha spoke about the truth of cessation, Nirodha Satcha, so that we would know there is an end to suffering. And fourth, the Buddha taught the truth of the path, Magga Satcha, so that those who want to reach the end of suffering would know how to get there. The Buddha said to reach the end of suffering, follow the path, the Eightfold Path of Satipatthana. So this is the order in which the Four Noble Truths were taught by the Buddha. It's called Desana Kama, the Desana order. But there is also the order in which they occur in practice. And that's called Pavati Kama. So what appears first in the practice? Can you guess? Okay, the first one to appear, what? Were you going to raise your hand? No. Okay.
The second one.
Which is? The cause. No. The first one that appears is the truth of the path. Because all day long we meditate. So when physical objects arise, we observe that. When there's pains or aches, Vedana, we observe Vedana. When there's thinking, planning, etc., we observe thinking. And when there's a combination of mental and physical dhammas appearing, we observe those. And that observation is none other than the truth of the path, this meditation that we do. So mindfulness, that is sati, and the other qualities involved in observation are called Magga Satcha, the truth of the path. So we also call this practice Satipatthana, and Satipatthana is a combination of sati, which means to take note of or to recollect, and patthana, which means to become established closely. So when our mindfulness or sati is established closely on material objects or kaya, this is called kayanupassana, satipatthana. Close establishment of mindfulness on consciousness is called cittanupassana satipatthana. Close establishment of sati, mindfulness, on pains, aches, itching, and so on is called vedananupassana satipatthana. And close establishment of mindfulness on mental physical qualities involved in things like seeing, hearing, and so on is called dhammanupassana satipatthana. So developing these four foundations of mindfulness, or these four kinds of observation, is developing the truth of the path, Magga Satcha. So, and due to development of the path, knowledge arises. So, what one comes to know with every observation is the truth of suffering. The yogi observes rising and falling. And knowing the rising is knowing matter, or rupa. Knowing that which knows the rising. There's the mind that knows the rising, and the yogi can also know this, and this is mind. The yogi knows the falling, which is matter, and the yogi knows that which knows the falling, which is mind. So with every observation, the yogi becomes aware of mind and matter, and mind and matter are the truth of suffering, dukkha satcha. So to know mind and matter is knowing the truth of suffering. So this is an aside. So why do we call mind and matter the truth of suffering? Because we cannot, how can we say? Because they are subject to aging, sickness, and death. We can't prevent our body from getting old. We can't prevent ourselves from dying. We can't prevent our mind from becoming other than we would like it to be. We can't prevent the aging process. So because it is subject to aging, sickness, and death, and so on, it is called the truth of suffering. So when the yogi meditates and knows mind and matter, the yogi comes to know what truth? The truth of? The first, dukkha satcha. Right.
Dukkha satcha, la noble vérité de la souffrance.
So why do we come to know? the truth of suffering. We come to know it because of observing, because of meditating, and that is because of the path, because of the truth of the path, we come to know the truth of suffering. What we know in every moment of practice is the truth of suffering. So what is dispelled by developing the path and knowing the truth of suffering?
L'attachement is
yes, craving.
Craving.
That's right. So with every noting and knowing, the yogi is dispelling craving, lust, raga, greed. So we can't just tell craving, don't come. It doesn't go away if we bomb it or set it on fire. So how do we dispel it? So we dispel it by knowing dukkha in every noting, by knowing dukkha in every moment of mindful observation. The rising is dukkha, suffering. The falling is suffering. Knowing is suffering. Bending the arm is suffering. Stretching out the arm is suffering. Knowing is suffering. Giving a Dhamma talk is suffering. Listening to it is suffering. So every time the yogi knows suffering, she is dispelling craving. And the craving which is dispelled is the truth of the cause. Its cool, peaceful cessation is the truth of cessation, Nirodha Satya or Nibbana. So now, the Eightfold Path. With every observation of rising, falling, lifting, moving, placing, the Eightfold Path is arising within the being of the yogi. The Eightfold Path is present and it's being developed. And because of development of the path, Vipassana knowledge develops stage by stage until maturity. So how is the path being developed? When the yogis are meditating, there's no killing, there's no stealing, there's no committing adultery. So the path factor of right action, or samma kammanta, is occurring. And the yogis are not lying, committing slander, using harsh speech, or speaking idly. So therefore the path factor of right speech, samma vaca, is occurring. So the yogis also are not making a living by unjust means. So the path factor of right livelihood, samma ajiva, is also occurring. And these three factors, right action, right speech, right livelihood, are the path factors of sila. There are three factors of the Eightfold Path. And because of controlling actions and speech by keeping morality, our physical and verbal defilements or kilesas are eliminated. We don't do wrong by way of body and speech. So this describes the first three factors of the path. And then when we are meditating, we observe rising, falling, sitting, touching, going, coming, standing, eating, drinking, aching, and so on. And every time true nature arises, the yogi observes material qualities, in Pali called kaya sabhava, every time they arise. And this observation is sati, or mindfulness. The yogi observes the feelings of pleasantness, unpleasantness, and neutrality, or vedana, every time they arise. And this is also sati. The yogi observes consciousness every time it arises, and that is sati. Sati arises to observe the mind and matter that are involved in every seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching that arise. And this sati that makes a note of things is the path factor of right mindfulness, or sammasati. The effort made to observe, or exerting oneself so that sati arises, is the path factor of right effort, samavayama. The mind becomes calm and collected due to making effort to observe in that way, and therefore the noting mind falls collectedly on the rising. The noting mind also falls collectedly on the falling, on the lifting, on the moving, on the placing. The mind is collected on the arising object again, moment by moment, and this is the path factor of right concentration, Samma Samadhi. So these three factors, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, are called the Samadhi group of path factors. So this makes up three more factors of the Eightfold Path. So here we are not developing the concentration of absorption called jhana, but there is concentration that arises in every moment of observation, which could be called, rather than the concentration of absorption, it could be called the concentration of knowledge, or concentration with knowledge. So the Samadhi group of path factors arises in the mind of the Vipassana yogi, and the obsessive kilesas, that is the ones that rise up and assault the mind when there's not concentration, these are suppressed in the yogi when the path factors of the Samadhi group are occurring, and therefore the mind becomes cool and peaceful and calm. So with the Sila group of factors, what types of kilesas or defilements are eliminated? Does anybody remember?
Yes, she says not to kill, not to
right.
steal.
Those are what types of, let's see. Well, what I'm getting at is it overcomes the gross kilesas that express themselves as actions or speech. Actions such as killing, for example, like you mentioned. So that is eliminated by Sila. So even though we keep Sila and then we don't commit those actions, they can, the desire to commit wrong actions can come up in the mind. So that's why we also need concentration, samadhi, so that these, the mind is, so that these obsessive kilesas don't arise in the mind. Okay, so I've already spoken about the Sila group, or morality group, and the concentration group, or samadhi group. And now is the time to talk about the wisdom group. There are two factors in the wisdom group, which are right view and right thought. And I will describe how they arise in terms of the practice. So the practice is to place the mind on the rising of the abdomen when the rising occurs, so that we can note it. And that factor that places the mind on the object is called samma sankappa, or right application of thought. Placing the mind on the falling when the falling occurs is also this same factor, samma sankappa, or right application of thought. So placing the noting mind on the lifting when it appears is also samma sankappa. And same with placing the noting mind on the moving of the foot, or the placing of the foot when they occur. This samma sankappa is the factor that places the observing mind on the object of observation time after time. And now, right view. How does right view arise in the practice? When we meditate, because we note the rising, we come to see that the physical rising is one thing, and the mind that knows it is another. And when noting the falling, the physical falling is one thing, and the noting of it is another. So the yogi knows clearly and distinctly that mind is one thing and matter is another. And this is the path factor of right view, or samadhi. Why does rising occur? From time to time, the yogi knows the rising happens because of inhaling, and the inhalation happens because of wanting to inhale. The physical rising happens because of the physical inhalation. The noting mind arises because of the rising. Knowledge arises because of the noting mind. And because of knowledge, the yogi realizes Nibbana. What knows like this is right view, samadhi. Right view is what knows mind and matter, and also knows cause and effect, or causal relationships. And there are many, many causal relationships, which I have not described in this course. And people sometimes study what is called the dependent origination, and understand theoretically how conditions or sankharas arise due to ignorance, consciousness arises due to sankharas, mind and matter arise due to consciousness, and the six sense spheres arise due to mind and matter. And knowing like this is also right view. Knowing about cause and effect from a theoretical standpoint is also what we call right view, or samadhi. But the type of knowledge that arises in the mind of the yogi is how the rising is caused by inhalation, or how standing up is caused by the intention to stand up, and so on. The yogi comes to know about cause and effect in a practical way. So these two first types of knowledge, the discernment of mind and matter and the discernment of causal relationships, are very important, because vipassana, what we call vipassana knowledge, will not arise without them. But with this foundation, when the yogi continues to observe mind and matter that are related as cause and effect, the yogi comes to see that they pass away after they arise, and that this happens in a fleeting manner. And what knows this is right view, or samadhi. Further, one comes to know that this mind and matter that is related as cause and effect, which arises and passes away, is oppressive. And knowing like this is also right view. To know that mind and matter, related as cause and effect, do so according to their own nature. They lack an inherent self. Knowing this also is right view, or samadhi. When the yogi perceives, can distinguish clearly between mind and matter, one comes to understand there's no man, there's no woman. Although we speak about man and woman and so on, these, on an ultimate level, these don't exist. What really exists is just mind and matter. And when one sees the cause-effect relationships between mind and matter, one comes to understand, because one understands the true cause for things to arise, one no longer has any idea of a fictitious cause. So the truth of suffering is to be discerned. The truth of craving is to be dispelled. The truth of cessation is to be realized, and the truth of the path is to be developed. The mind and matter in me and you and all of us is the truth of suffering, because it is subject to aging, sickness, and death. And craving is what causes this truth of suffering to come about. There is the cessation of craving can be realized through development of the path. So may all of you, by observation of your mind and body, using the path of Satipatthana, may you come to realize the way things really are, eliminate, perceive, see clearly the truth of suffering, eliminate the truth of the cause, develop the path, and realize the cessation of all suffering that is Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I would like to say that this talk was given, this is a talk I heard someone else give, Unenda Siri Mulamyan Seattle, who is a respected monk in the Panditarama family. And virtually every talk I give is not my own talk. I only give the talks that I hear other people give. But the translation is mine. So usually my talks are based on what Sayadaw U Pandita says. But this talk was given by another Sayadaw.